Joining me is Dr. Chloe Carmichael. People refer to her as Dr. Chloe. Like myself, she's trained in clinical psychology. She is a USA Today best-selling author. She's written a book that really is kind of right up my alley. The book is Can I Say That? Why Free Speech Matters and How to Use It Fearlessly. And I got to say, this is part wake-up call and part survival guide. And in it, Dr. Chloe argues that cancel culture thrives when good people stay silent. And she's got the tools to help you really feel comfortable speaking up, staying grounded, and how to build stronger relationships in the process. Because I promise you, you're not the only one that feels the way you feel. And you never know that until you actually venture out. One of the things that you talk about in your book that I thought was really important, you stress that over-pathologizing everyday struggles creates a victim mindset that undermines resilience. And I think the ideology on campuses right now is failing to prepare these young people for the real world, because they are over-pathologizing these everyday struggles. And then when they get out into a full contact, full competitive world, I don't think they're going to be prepared for it.
I agree. It's the idea that, words are violence. And I know, again, you talk about this in your book as well, of course, which I love to read, that words are violence, or, silence is violence. It's what an anxiety provoking way to live your life, right? To think that, heaven forbid, if I say the wrong words, it's like running someone over with my car, or if I hear the wrong words, it's like somebody, hitting me and threatening my existence. And as you said, it's kind of weaponizing this, victim status. So one of the things I talk about in the book as well is the secondary gains of victimhood, which again, I'm sure you're completely, of course, aware of, but, just for your listening audience, that the classic example in Psychology 101 textbooks is a little girl breaks her leg. She has a cast. She gets excused from gym class. Everybody signs her cast. She starts to enjoy the attention and the perks so much that when the doctor says it's time for the cast to come off, she genuinely believes she's come to be so attached to it. She says, no, it hurts. I still need the cast. She's not even necessarily trying to lie. She's just psychologically become so attached to it. And the same thing, I think, can happen with these, secondary gains of victimhood and these constant chirping about hate speech and bullying, to the point where I feel like those are the bullies. Those are the hateful people that are interfering with people's ability to just use language, which is our primary system cognitively to organize and develop our thoughts and to exchange information and to form social bonds, to develop good ideas and to discard bad ideas. Language hinges on all of those things, or all of those things hinge on language. So yeah, I feel like when we start mixing all that up with victimhood, then of course we're not preparing these students very well to go out into the world. Unfortunately, I think what they're actually doing is bringing it into corporate America. So I'm seeing a lot of that too.
I couldn't agree more. Allergies can pop up anytime, and this year they're hitting harder and lasting longer than ever. That means restless nights, sneezing, coughing, and that miserable post-nasal drip that keeps you awake. But there is a solution: Sambrosa Night Syrup. It's made without dyes, synthetic colors, artificial flavors, or high fructose corn syrup. Just a base of nutrient-rich honey, 7 organic herbs, and a small dose of antihistamine that help you breathe easier and sleep deeply. It's soothing yet effective without the harsh side effects. So try it and get allergy relief to get your best night's sleep and wake up rested. Sambrosa Night Syrup is a balanced formula that ensures you wake up energized. Visit Sambrosa.com and use code Dr. Phil for 25% off your first order. With a 90-day guarantee, there's no reason for you not to get the help you need. That's Sambrosa.com, code Dr. Phil for 25% off. Let me ask you, how do you explain, if you were explaining to parents or a corporate culture shaper, whether it was HR or management, how do you explain to them why victimhood is so seductive to people, why it's so appealing to people?
I think people understand intuitively, that it's seductive and appealing to people because it sort of absolves you of your, feeling of any, personal responsibility, and that it can seem attractive in that regard, that you don't feel that, you need to do anything or change anything. There's an example I give in the book about a woman that is not performing well at the job. She's having performance issues. She tries to blame it on being, quote, bullied, by a coworker. And then through some of our work together, she comes to acknowledge that there's actually a skills gap. And when she comes to just be honest about that, the good news is that she's able to get training and fill the skills gap. So I share about, for example, the internal and external locus of control, that when we have an external locus of control and we think other people are affecting our lives, that can sound good because we feel we don't have to be responsible for it, but it's actually the internal locus of control that's associated with better mental health outcomes. Because then when you're in the driver's seat, the good news is that you can make some changes and have things work out better.
I think people need to understand that if they give away that locus of control, I mean, I used to I can remember in school, whether it was middle school or graduate school, I would look at people that would come out and say, "Oh man, I did well on that test. I was so lucky." I would think, "Really?" Or they would say, "Oh yeah, the test was easy." Well, was it, or were you really well prepared? And it was interesting, even before I knew what locus of control was, and even before I had the psychological symbol system, I used to marvel at how people would not give themselves credit or hold themselves accountable for the outcomes. And I think it's because I grew up poor and in athletics. And the two came together interestingly, because when you're poor, intentions don't matter a lot, it's results. I mean, you either work and get paid or you don't. And in athletics, they don't care who you are. They care how fast you can run, how high you can jump, and how many people you can knock down. And nothing else matters. It's just results, results, results. And that's what I'm saying. I think we've got all of these liberal professors that say they're not talking about toxic masculinity. They're talking about masculinity being toxic. And they're talking about being competitive, goal-oriented, and looking for financial gain or security is somehow gauche. That's just, why are you talking about that? We should have equal outcomes. Well, no, actually, we shouldn't. I think that's the ultimate setup for failure. You know, when life gets hectic and stress starts stacking up, it's easy to overlook one of the body's most important minerals, magnesium. That's why I take Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers. It's a premium formula that combines 7 forms of bioavailable magnesium along with vitamin B6 and humic and fulvic acids to help optimize absorption. Magnesium Breakthrough supports relaxation, deeper sleep, stress resilience, and even helps maintain healthy bone function. All from one simple supplement. It's all natural, free from synthetic additives, and made to support your body from head to toe. So get ready to unwind, rest better, and keep your energy balanced, and try Magnesium Breakthrough. Visit bioptimizers.com/Dr. Phil and use promo code Dr. Phil for 15% off and 25% off during Black Friday. When your body gets the right kind of magnesium, everything just works better. What do you say to people that speak up and do get pushback from people? Maybe they speak up in a neighborhood barbecue, they speak up in their Sunday school class, they They speak up at work, at maybe a lunch break, and they really are a lone voice. And people label them and say, oh, you're a Trumper, or what are you, some kind of conservative right winger? They start pushing back at them. What do you tell people if they find themselves in that situation? You address it in the book. Just what are some highlights?
First of all, I can understand that we probably all become so sensitized to some of that it can feel alarming almost at first, we're cancel culture and all that stuff. But one of the things that I also encourage people to try to do if they get pushback is actually to welcome it, because again, that's part of the true diversity of opinions and of thoughts. And so sometimes even just reflecting back to the person, like, okay, so I hear what you're saying is that you think it's transphobic that I don't want a boy to play on our girls soccer team league. Like, that's how you feel, that's what you're saying. And just invite the person to tell you more. Sometimes that can actually be disarming. I know, Dr. Phil, one of the things that you say, and I completely agree, is that people want to feel heard. And so sometimes just letting people know, that modeling for them that you can actually handle disagreement, and you'll even invite them to share. And then once they've shared, you can say, well, would you like to hear how I feel or why I view it differently? And if they'll actually own that they don't want to, if they'll say, no, I don't want to, then you can say, okay, I hear that. And then you don't have to, cast your pearls before swine. But if that can sometimes actually stimulate an open dialogue.
I think if you're patient and you do model what you want to get back, sometimes we do get what we put out.
Yeah.
And if you don't, bow your neck and become combative, sometimes, not always, but sometimes you can take the air out of the room and calm things down some. And I must say, I've been very outspoken against anti-Semitic speech and conduct, and I look at the criticism and death threats and all that I get in levels that you can't imagine. And I must say, the more violent the threat, the worse the grammar. And really, I think when people run out of socially acceptable ways to express themselves, they default to physical violence and that sort of thing. And I think people need to remember that only 20% of the people use Twitter, for example. And of those 20%, 80% of the messages are posted by like 10% of the people that use it. So you're getting down to a real small group of people that make most of the noise. And I think people don't really understand how bot farms are deployed to drive ideology. And you could be arguing with a non-existent human being. I think we have to sometimes take a deep breath and say, how important is this person's opinion to the things that really matter in my life? My health, my well-being, my family, my children. I think sometimes we amplify the importance of other people's opinions over the things that really matter in our own life. And sometimes it's good to kind of take a deep breath and do a check on how much we need their approval. And if we sometimes check our whole card on that, we'll feel a little better.
Totally. Yes, Dr. Phil. So, I mean, what you said so many great things there. And, to your point about the more violent, and I'm so sorry you're receiving that kind of filth, but it is interesting, as you and I know as psychologists, when you have someone who has a problem with violence or anger management, the first thing we want to do is teach them to use their words, is to teach them to communicate. And so ironically, this, attempt to squash speech and stifle speech, I think is, leading more often for people to feel like they're gonna, pop up violently. And, as you said, if we are getting pushback from people, we can get very invested, at that in the moment. And so some of the techniques as well that I share with people, one is called relax your body and your mouth. Like, it's so interesting that, if you're sitting across from, that relative at the Thanksgiving table and they're saying things that you don't agree with, you might notice your whole body is almost tensing up, and your mouth is, we call it chomping at the bit for a reason. And so if we can learn to just, I share some techniques in the book to relax your body and to relax your mouth, and learn some listening techniques that I share. Think about a time in the past when you yourself held a political or social viewpoint that you now kind of cringe when you think about, right? So we've all, at least I have, had a viewpoint or two in the past that I kind of now feel is a little silly. And so when we hear someone saying something that we feel like, how could they think that? It can be helpful to take ourselves back to those times as well, to just find the humanity in all of us.
When you were talking about relax your body and your mouth, the first thing that came to my mind, and that's in chapter 6, where you're talking about 5 tools for self-restraint. Some other things that Dr. Chloe was talking about there were find the facts, relax your body and your mouth, imagine an audience, count the minutes, count the questions, and transfer the grace, thought replacements. And when I was reading this section on relax your body and your mouth, the thing that jumped into my mind when I was looking at that was face validity. And I really want to caution people, because sometimes the solutions that are most elegant, they're elegant because they're simple, they're doable, they're profound, and in their elegance, they lack face validity. People will look at them and say, well, that's so simple. I mean, how could that help? And because they don't seem fancy, because they don't have a lot of 75-cent words in them, people can say, that doesn't sound like much. You couldn't be more wrong, because it's those very things of controlling your physiology in the moment so you don't get overamped can have the most profound effect on how you handle that stressful situation and circumstance. And I've done a lot of work with organic pain, and I talk to people about relaxation. And I'm not talking about chilling, I'm talking about physiological absence of tension and truly relaxing their muscle groups, large and small. And unless you can really sell them on its importance so they don't poo-poo it and jump over it, if you can get them to buy in and they truly commit to it, it can be so important. And that is one that I just would not want people to jump over in your book, because it's what can get them through that tense moment in a social situation, so they don't have a meltdown, they don't have a blow up, they can get through it and not overreact. It's so important. So it may not have face validity because it doesn't seem fancy, but it's one of the most powerful things you talk about in that section.